Yo,
Hey, what's
yo.
up?
How you doing, man?
Doing real good. How about yourself?
Not bad. Not bad at all. I just had some PvPs and some more PvPs and some more PvPs, but I won a lot of them, so feeling pretty good.
That's
Lots
good.
and lots of robos proxied and lots of dead Protoss players, so good times. How about you? Did you get any ladder in today or just hopped on?
I got 4 games earlier, all TVT, so it looks like it's the day of mirror matchups. And they're all Marine tank. All and so many battlecruiser rushes. I don't know when that became the new thing to do, but they're everywhere.
Yeah, a lot of people having fun with with BCs. Once you played it a few times, you know you've memorized your response to it off your standard build order. It's not too hard to deal with. It's just when we get caught by it, often we're a bit of a deer in headlights the first time or two. So I'm just gonna make this top info a little bit smaller in your document, and okay, so I've just copy pasted all this in here. You've got your document open. You can type in there as well, right?
Yep.
Cool, cool. And did you end up sending payment through for the coaching yet?
Yeah, I got PayPal in a couple weeks ago now.
A couple of weeks ago. I think I've marked it off already because I think you
Yeah,
emailed me right after you sent it. Let me just check my.
yeah, you sent some confirmation to me, so hopefully it made it through.
Yep, fantastic. We got a whole package, so awesome. So we're going to be doing 5 hours together over the next couple of weeks and months, which should be great. All right,
I'm looking
fantastic.
forward to it.
All right, man. This should be good. All right, so you're about Diamond 1, about 4,100 MMR at the moment. You need the most help in TVP. That's the big thing you wanted to probably start working on.
Yeah.
So in terms of like a plan for today, let's just do a rough one. So 14th January, I'm always just going to put the most recent stuff, 2020 coaching at the top. So goals for today, we'll try to, because it's the first session, I want to understand how you're playing. So I'm going to read through your mechanics questions that you answered already. That's below. I'll read through that quickly and check it and see if there's any suggestions. And then we'll just focus on TVP for the rest of it and kind of dive deep into it. Anything
Perfect.
else you want to achieve? Any other goals for today?
Really just TVP. I mean, my win rate with TVP has been 20%. Everything else has been over 60%. So I feel like if I can get that dialed in, I'll probably see some significant change.
Okay, cool, man. I think that's yeah, easy place to start. Easy place to start. Yeah, there'll be a weird thing. At some point you'll start losing a lot of TVZs or TVTs once we get the TVP up. And we'll go, oh, that's the weakest matchup now.
Yeah,
Which is a good
90%
thing.
sure that'll be TBT. That one's hard.
Damn, yeah, your TVZ is looking good. So let's look at those mechanics questions before we get too deep. Big thanks, guys, for the support in chat. Sorry, not going to be doing any more shout-outs until there's some downtime, but thank you for the guys out there throwing some support. Lots of people excited for Terran coaching, apparently. Hoping to pick up something. All right. Control Shift you're using, Shift deselecting you're using. Do you play Bio or Mech usually?
In TVP,
Or
bio.
you do a mix? Do you do Mech against Zerg? Is it or?
Yeah, I do BC Mech against Zerg, and I've been playing around with Marine Tank and Mech in TVT, but I haven't figured out what I like more. But TVP, bio every time.
Okay, awesome. And you're kind of used to sending out marine spotters and just deselecting them from your army key. Like you're pretty consistently control grouping your army, or are we doing a lot of select all army key?
I actually don't have a bound select all army keys, so pretty consistent on that one.
All right, we've gone cold turkey. Cool, that's good. It's nice to use it once in a while. We can always click above the minimap if we need it, but it's always better to have the good habits of control grouping our army, right? Being able to use things individually, especially like if we're playing mech, you know, need our Vikings and maybe our Raven to go off separately, especially if we're hunting down BCs while our other units do other things. Just makes it so much easier in those chaotic situations. In terms of your control groups, are you using the standard hotkey layout or is it customized at all?
Pretty much standard. I mean, I have a lot of small custom pieces here and there, but nothing too fancy. 123 is 123. I use tilde and mouse 4 are also army hotkeys, but I'm not very proficient at using it.
Okay. Yeah, mouse 4, you want to start getting used to that for dumping. Awesome, cool. 4 for production, 5 for CCs. All right, so you just tab between your production, barracks, factory, starport, all in the same. No worries. Mouse DPI 1100. Awesome. You are using camera locations. F1 through F4, main, natural, third, and fourth. Cool. How do you zoom to your production? Do you just double tap number 4 for production normally on your keyboard?
Pretty much F1 gets, main base, gets most of my production. Honestly, if I double tap to get to my production, I'm not aware of doing it. Usually I just do it without moving the camera.
Okay, cool. All right, man. I think this is pretty good. I always like to read through here. Some people are like, I don't know what shift deselecting is. I don't use control groups. And I want to play 4-base macro biotank. And I'm like, yeah, you can't do that. Like, those are two different concepts. Playing big macro games, having to try to control map, defend counterattacks, do our own harassment, et cetera, et cetera. There's certain mechanics we need to be able to do that sort of stuff. You're using all the generically good mechanics. So we don't need to do anything new here. Mechanics check, all good. If I see something weird, I'll ask you about it. But for now, let's get straight on into TVP. So I'll make you the party leader. And if you just grab one of your recent TVP replays, or maybe you had some specific ones you wanted to look at. If you don't, just any recent TVP will do.
All right, I've got a couple. I've got one where I get completely demolished right away by players better than me, and then I've got another that gets into the late mid game, and I believe I lose that one too. Do you think which one do you think would be a better start?
Just grab one. I reckon we'll see good things in both. So, yeah, doesn't really matter. We can kind of zoom through. So I mean, honestly, if you just make me the party leader here in the lobby, right-click my name, promote to party. Thank you. To lobby host, sorry, which you figured out anyway, despite me telling you to do the wrong thing.
I just selected the first thing without looking at it.
All right, roll a dice, 50-50, it works. Flip a coin. Okay, man. Cool. So with your opening, you've been doing a barracks first. You've been going a pretty standard opening. Are you normally doing a mine drop? Or it's just totally random from what you've written here? Kind of changes things?
I think when I first talked to you, it was completely random. Since then, I've kind of honed in on a 3 mine drop, moving into kind of 645 push that's tanks, marauders, medevacs, and raid.
And are you building a 3rd command center behind that push, or are you building like a 4th and a 5th barracks?
Both. 3rd command. Since my APM's a little low, I just wait till I have about 700 floating, and then I put down 3rd command center, 2 more.
Okay. And are you hitting with just +1 attack with that push normally?
I have recently discovered I can fit in +1 attack, so I'm not consistent about doing it yet, though.
All right. Yeah, you'll need to write that into your build order in a bit more detail. So what we'd want to do is we want to make sure that gets... I mean, actually, so here we go. You did write it out below. There we go. Sorry, I didn't see that before. Okay, so you wrote 14 depot, 16 racks. We're going to go Reaper, Marine, Reactor, Marine. So everyone has their own shorthand. Your shorthand makes perfect sense there. I do a few more dot points and indents rather than you've just got your little arrow things. Works totally fine. Looks logical. If I write stuff down in here in my shorthand, looks weird to you, just go back and change it to what makes sense for you. This is ultimately your resource from now on, this document, right? This helps me look at what we worked on in the last session, helps me remind us where we were and kind of get some written record because we're going to cover so much stuff. There's no way you're going to remember everything we talk about. Even the next day reviewing it, you can't apply everything we talk about immediately. So it's something we want you to come back to and be able to read easily. So feel free to go ahead and edit anything I write in here and make it as legible as possible.
Perfect.
All right, 100 gas, factory, 3 mines, factory. Okay, so you're going medevac for the drop. Then you're going into a Raven. And you're going reactor for medevacs and libs. 2 racks swap onto tech labs. Okay, stim and concussive. Is your... Okay, so... All right. Will this execution here be that build order that you've written?
It should be, pretty much.
Be?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I've got a pretty good idea of it. Just double check. 420, the mine into toss mineral line. Awesome. Probably closer to 430 usually. It's pretty rare you'll get 420, but let's just take a look. All right, so let's go back to the very start and look at every tiny detail. Something we should try to make a habit of whenever we're trying to improve. Did we do our build order correctly? First things first, the depot. Seems mundane, yet it can be late a lot of the time. Looks like this time we're typing good luck, have fun. 2 or 3 second delay on that depot. Put the depot down, then type good luck, have fun.
Yeah, strategic on his part.
Yeah, he did it right then, you know? Put the pylon down, then typed it, and then bam, you are a couple seconds late on it. Not the biggest deal, but that does slow down your barracks just a tiny bit as well. So it's a small flow-on effect. Barracks goes down, gas goes down. More or less all good here. Definitely... Gonna keep an eye on that. Are we SCV scouting with this build?
I actually never SCV scout in any matchup.
Okay, but you're building a depot just blind every game, right? Sorry, a bunker, I mean.
Yeah, I generally build it blind.
Very early, nice, yeah. So if it's proxy gate, you're actually totally fine because your Reaper can just come back and get in that bunker. Yeah, this is a pretty safe opening. I like it. I quite like this opening. I think the factory could have been a couple seconds earlier there, but overall, reasonably tight. Reaper's the first scout. Not a well-microed Reaper, unfortunately, but that's okay.
Bad miss micro on that one.
Is that common for you to lose your Reaper, or do you find you consistently scout what your opponent's up to?
I'm about 50-50, honestly.
Okay. So let's
My early game... I don't know if it's a habit of bad APM or low APM, but I'll either miss micro or miss something back at the base. What I'm trying to do is scout around and see if I can see any indication of the tech path and make it out alive.
Yeah, we always want to either at least stay alive or at least see the tech. And, you know, we can see in this game that our opponent just didn't build any tech. And, yeah, it was going sentry first. That's why the tech's so slow. But, yeah, generally speaking, let's go look at that Reaper. So, your Reaper was A-moved, which is nice for catching probes, but it's kind of annoying if you stop and shoot this pylon, right? So, definitely, I would say in general, I would go for the ramp here rather than jumping at the cliff. Because the ramp isn't going to have the awkward jump up, jump down animation, which, you know, could get you killed by an adept. And you know, if they're on point with their build on a big map like this, they're going to have a unit out, right? So it's usually better, I think, to just go, oh, there's an adept, pull back, and then cue it to jump in from the high ground after it's regenerated the 1 or 2 adept hits that it goes for. What do you think of that, just as a standard Reaper pattern?
That makes complete sense.
Okay, goes straight up ramp for mineral line. Immediately retreat if adept or stalker. A lot of the time they don't, though. People are really late on their core. People are bad, myself included, and just forget it. And they're like, oh, 6 seconds late, or they forget the second pylon or something. Or it goes straight across the map. So you always want to go straight for that mineral line. Immediately retreat if there's an adept stalker. Q to run back and then go back into the jump up path, right? In this case, it's not walled off. If it is walled off, you might just try to jump in the front. I think that's a good way of doing it. There are some nice things. If you're really quick, you can pull back in time. So you could run up the ramp, you see an adept, you go back before it even gets a hit. It shades, and then you just run around behind the natural nexus. And if the shade finishes, you jump up into the main, and you'll take 1 or 2 adept hits, but you've got, you know, a free circuit of the main base you can do to scout what's going on. If the pylon's at the front like that, you know their tech can only go in one position, right? And that's next to the cyber core and the gateway. So if that pylon wasn't at the front, you know there could be a second pylon somewhere in here. But if there's one pylon, as soon as you find the gate and the core, you know you've just got to search around them to see where the tech will go down. And if there's no tech at this point, so imagine you got a full scout, which you kind of almost did, but not quite.
So close.
You could basically say to yourself, it is 100% either a proxy or a sentry, right? It's got to be one of those if there's no tech down. If you'd seen everything here.
Is a Sentry at this time pretty standard? Honestly, I haven't paid that much attention.
It depends on the build order. So this is something which you can do as a little exercise some days, is go pay attention to the different Protoss openings. This is not particularly common. Sometimes it gets really popular in the meta for a week or two. Sometimes it doesn't. But this delays the tech quite a bit. Normally you would see a Robo or a Stargate or a Twilight go down with that first 100 gas or 150 gas rather than a Sentry, right? Often if it's a Stargate, you might see a Depths first because they cost less gas and the Stargate costs more gas. Robo first is reasonably rare unless they're just going like a 2-base Colossus style. But something we can think more about. It's not too important. For now, it's obviously just, it's good to see that information. Behind this, the build order looks reasonably solid. I'll write down that depot point, by the way. Even though it seems tiny, good to look at that. Depot was late due to good luck, have fun. In case that's a habit, just in case. Sometimes I do see people who are almost every game put that depot down late and it never gets fixed and it becomes just like this piece of muscle memory to almost, you only feel right when the depot goes down late. So just good to keep one eye on it for the next few replays we look at. But otherwise, Widow Mines, Medevac. We're going to go for a real fast engineering bay here. Now, obviously, that engineering bay is kind of nice because it allows us to get a turret down in time if we want to be super safe against very quick DTs. Is that why you're going for it, or do you always build the engineering bay this fast?
No, this is where I haven't figured out how to put +1 into my build. This is abnormally fast for me. Sometimes I don't even get it until I have a third. It's on a whim and random every game.
All right, so that's where we need to build it in. So taking a look at your build order, right up down below. I mean, if we think about it, right? If you rush your engineering bay, it's way too fast. +1 does not take that long to finish, right? Because you need your second and third barracks to pump out a certain amount of bio. That is the power spike. With any TVP standard bio push, it's all about the second and third barracks getting stim, shields, and building a whole bunch of Marauders and Marines, right? Combined with the reactor barracks. Those combined are what builds into your push. And all you need is that +1 to kick in by that 7-minute mark when you get to his base. So if we think through, do you know how long it takes to upgrade +1 attack?
No, not off the top of my head.
Guess, off the top of your head.
Oh, let's see.
You'll probably be very close. 130? I think that's pretty close. I think it's like 120. I actually can't see on this overlay. You can tell me.
114.
114. So 114. So just under 2 minutes. So if you start that right now, it's going to be done by like 625. There is no way your stim push is going to be ready by 625, especially if the engineering bay goes down this early. So I think we can very easily just say, oh, just tuck the engineering bay in after we go for the second and third barracks. Seems like a pretty good plan, right?
Yeah.
All right, so if we look at your build order, I'll let you add that in on your document. Scroll down to your current build order right up. And if you can go in and wedge that in after second and third barracks, which I believe is, in that little middle section. So you might come up with a more specific trigger for it in a little bit, where it's like, oh, I got to do it just as I'm swapping my barracks over, or just as I start my barracks, I actually put the engineering bay down like right after that, or it's right after this next depot. There might be some trigger that makes more sense if you keep finding it a bit awkward. But for now, basically like in game, we don't want you to, be thinking, oh, let's calculate my push timing and then put my engineering bay down. That's just kind of the logic we did to get to there. So it's good to have a little note there for now, but definitely something we won't even be thinking about later on, right?
Yeah, I figured I'd add the note, and then just mathematically, I can work back. If I'm pushing at 645, it takes 114 seconds to research +1, and then another, let's say 90 seconds for an engineering bay. Then I can just set a time, and at that time I start every game. I start at my engineering bay every game. Does that seem like a good way to?
Yeah, I think that should be okay when you change build orders, right? For now, we'll just say, okay, it's after the second and third barracks. You'll find the time that works, and then you can just check in-game as well. Did I put the engineering bay right down on time? No, I forgot it for 30 seconds. +1 was 30 seconds late in the push. Okay, the build order's correct. I just need to get better at execution, right? Which is usually what's gonna happen, right? You go back, you look at your build order, and you can figure out, oh, I executed it right when I intended to in the build order, and it was still 40 seconds late. Okay, I need to change the build order, but this should work fine for now. And I think that should be totally okay. And even if your +1 kicks in a little after the push starts, that should be fine. So first things first, this drop seems kind of late, right? You wrote in your build order you would be hitting at 420. So what went wrong? Let's go back and
That's a great question.
Because the timing on that's very important. So that starport, was that on time? First of all, remember I pointed out your factory was a little late.
Yeah.
So...
And with the barracks being late and the factory being late, I'm probably already behind, what, 10, 15 seconds?
Well, the barracks and depot were only it was like 2 or 3 seconds at most. It was real small. So I don't think that affects things too much. And the factory timing is kind of okay, I think. But you went second gas before factory. That's not normal, is it? Is that what you normally do?
Generally, no. Usually the worker that builds the second depot builds the second gas. But I can usually start a factory before that happens. So I think I just missed the factory at this point, probably while I was paying attention to my Reaper or something.
All right, let's make sure we're really set on that, because that's something where that just throws off your factory timing and then your starport timing. And it's one of those things where just having inconsistency there means you're more likely to not notice when your factory finishes, because it's finishing at a bit of a different time than normal, right? Throws your rhythm off. Your internal clock kind of gets a bit screwed up. Personally, I would always build the factory with that depot SCV to make sure that goes down on time. And then the second gas goes down after the factory. That's my rule in any 1-1-1 build is factory starts, then second gas starts by just pulling a guy off minerals. And I think that ensures you prioritize the correct thing. What do you think?
Yeah, it makes sense, especially right now where I'm down on minerals. Like by building the refinery, I'm delaying my factory even that much longer.
And if you look at the efficiency, right, your SCV is already right in position where the factory wants to go. I mean, you do end up doing it a little bit further back, I guess, with this build. But if you're doing like a TVZ Hellion opening, right, you'd want the factory right there anyway. So you're kind of using the SCV that's next to the factory location, and then you're pulling an SCV off minerals, which is already next to the gas location. So there's just a little bit less SCV running around time, which is, it's a small thing, but a nice bit of efficiency. So that's a note we can kind of add. I'm just going to add these notes above, and you can add them, whichever ones you want, into like a little notes section below your build order. I always like to have a notes section where I just write down generic little tidbits like, oh, I should always remember to go for the main base, not the natural with the Widow Mine drop. Just because in this meta, they're always sitting at the natural or something like that, right? So there's these notes that sometimes they're a bit more tactical, they're a bit more minute. Sometimes it's real small things I don't want written in the core build, like, remember my starport SCV has got to start building depots or I'll get supply blocked on 46, you know? Little things like that. But for now, let's scroll back up to the notes. Very fast engineering bay. I'll add this down. Okay, depot SCV builds factory.
Add-on complete.
Then we go for the second gas. Let's look at this starport. Does the starport start immediately? It does. We start Widow Mines immediately. Let's see. Does a medevac start immediately when that starport finishes?
SCV ready.
Pretty much. So there's a few seconds delayed here. Not absolutely massively, but we can also see our Widow Mines aren't really grouped up. I would have probably had them unburrowed and all sitting next to the starport right here to make my life easy. So I could just pick it up immediately, already have them all on the control group, box it, click on the medevac, boost across the map. And that would save you a few seconds. So I personally would really like to load that up straight away. And we would probably shave about 10 seconds off this by default, which is fine because I don't think you're ever going to hit 420. I have a GM player who hangs out in chat and he was testing it and he said about 428 is probably the fastest he sees like Hero Marine get to their base with the Widow Mine drop. So if we're hitting 440, I think that's totally fine.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I think the time was taken from me just playing against a very easy AI and roughly the time where I was close to their base.
I think, yeah. And maybe you did something different with the build order as well. Like maybe you went against first or something, or maybe you went Marine instead of Reaper. So you had an extra 50 gas and a faster fact. Maybe there was something that shifted there because, yeah, 420 is insanely fast. Okay, cool. So that's going to fix that up, right? Medevac. So all 3 mines together on control group next to starport to instantly load up and boost across the map. All right, so that's going to be real nice. So you can visualize here, we would normally already have that second and third barracks building, right? instead of that engineering bay. So I guess right around 345 is probably when that's going to happen to go down a lot of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, now that I think about it, my timing for my second and third barracks is not standard across all my builds. I mean, normally I'd be starting it about halfway on the third mine. But recently, since I started adding in a Raven and 2 tanks, I haven't decided when's the best time to build them. Like, should I build them early and produce a couple of Marines, or should I build them a bit later and just in time for the 2 tech labs? I don't know what the most efficient way is.
You'll never be able to afford them before the tech labs are ready. That's just not going to squeeze into the build unless you're cutting SCVs or Marine production off your reacted barracks or something like that. So that should be totally fine. If we look at this, even if we didn't have the engineering bay, that's only 125 minerals, right? So we would barely have enough money right about now. So I think the rule here would just be, if we want to chain that up, if we find we forget it a little bit, it's after you start your medevac and your third mine, second and third barracks naturally comes with your next 300 minerals after that. Obviously, without cutting SCVs or depot production, you still keep those going. But it's just like a nice little trigger to go, ooh, that's the next thing that I've got to remember to do here. It's the second and third barracks, then the 2 tech labs, and then the swapperoonie happens, and your build should look pretty clean from there.
Makes sense.
So that's something I want you to try and do a lot of, by the way. It's just anytime something's inconsistent, first of all, have it written in your build order. Basically, it's just the next piece of infrastructure that goes down in this build, right? That's so, okay, it'll naturally happen when you're, oh, I've got 600 minerals. What am I meant to be doing? Oh, put down the 2 barracks. But then you tighten that up to the next level. If it's consistently late or a little bit iffy that you forget it, by chaining it to another action. Something like, you know, you're so focused on this Widow Mine drop, you start that third mine and that medevac, very easy to just say that is the trigger for getting the second and third barracks soon after that, and it's going to make sure it's really tight and you've got this whole section of your build really nicely kind of crammed together. So that should be a really awesome habit for you to build in all your matchups. Anytime anything's commonly forgotten, inconsistent, or a bit just off time all the ways, chain it to something that you never miss, or something that you're very focused on. Something like a Widow Mine drop that really is the anchor of this entire build is very easy to just link those 2 together, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's like all those tricks for remembering long strings of numbers.
Exactly. Chunk it together into pieces, because you can't try and remember it all as one. That's why, you know, people will have a 25,563,000 and there's a comma and a comma and a comma, you know. So what else is important here is, well, if we squeeze that Raven in, is that barracks going to be able to have a tech lab available to swap onto on time? I don't think so. So you will be able to swap onto the factory tech lab, but the other barracks is going to have to build its own tech lab because it won't time out, okay? So
that makes sense.
You're going to need to make sure, maybe you change the notation here in your notes, because I think you say 2 racks swapped onto tech labs. So you should change that, make it 1 swapped onto factory tech lab, and yeah, and the other one just builds its own tech lab.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna make a few notes here.
Cool.
We finished that add-on. Nice.
Yeah, this is going to be a really nice tight build order. I'm really happy you already put the effort in to define this and just choose a tight direction. Because honestly, these little details we're looking are going to be so valuable. Like, we're looking at, okay, we've already got a direction. We can just iron out these tiny details, get it really, really refined. Because define and refine is the name of the game. Know exactly what we want to do in the game, and then we can refine it down to the minute details. And also we can go into the tactics. Tactics are changeable so much based on what our opponents are doing. Strategic changes, going mines rather than tanks in some scenarios. These things are so advanced, and they need to come after we have a completely solid and stable baseline. So the fact that you've already gone in and defined this build order reasonably well, and now we're just kind of putting the cherry on top, the icing on the cake with that definition, it's massive. It makes a really big difference here. So so this is great. Have you finished those notes, or are you still working on it?
Yeah, I just got them finished.
Awesome. All right, man. So we've got that. We're going to go second and third barracks. So your factory is probably going to be swapping off and immediately building its own tech lab if it wants to start tanks, because otherwise it's just waiting around for the starport to finish. You're going to have to figure out what works with the factory and define exactly what you want to do with it. I would say it probably just lifts off and builds its own tech lab to get the tank production going.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm honestly not sold that I want tanks at all in this matchup. I haven't figured out tanks, Widow Mines, what I like better, what works best for me. I keep flipping between.
Sorry, you cut out for a moment there. You just said you keep flipping between?
Oh, I haven't figured out whether or not I want tanks or Widow Mines in this matchup, or any of those, and how many I build and when I rotate in and out of them. It's all a big mystery. I know Liberators work really well for me, but sometimes I do this 2-tank push. Other times I work in 4 or 6 Widow Mines with it. I don't know what I'm doing with it yet.
No worries. So we've got to define that a little bit. Come up with a baseline that we prefer, because both are completely fine. Tanks are better against Colossus and Stalkers, but they're decent versus anything. They've got great long range, so they can siege up in these great positions and force our opponent to fight into us. The Widow Mines have shorter range, but they're amazing versus Charge Zealots. There's pluses and minuses to both. For us, it's more important to choose a baseline and just do that every game. And then once we get really good at that push, because you're absolutely capable of beating any style with either one of them, if you do it well. And then once you're really comfortable with it, you can maybe work in if I see this with my Widow Mines, I do Widow Mine drop, I do this. If I see this other thing, I do the other thing. You know, you can come up with a set reaction that sometimes happens, but we don't need to do that until we get really good at the build order. So other than the +1 and stuff, looking at your build, do you have a 3rd gas and 4th gas timing defined? Because I don't see it written down in your notes.
I don't.
Okay, so that's a big one. That's got to be exactly the same every game. So in this game, it feels like I think you went 2nd and 3rd barracks, and then you just dropped a 3rd gas right after. Let's double check. So I think that might be something on like a semi-subconscious level. You're like, might as well grab that. Let's see.
Yeah, I've got a couple of feelings where around this time, like when I'm about 13 saturation on my 2nd, I take a 3rd gas, and then somewhere around 13 again, when I finish it, I take a 4th.
Okay. That's a decent way of doing it. It is a little more mechanically intensive because we've got to go back and look at it twice. So there's always something to be said, even at Masters and GM level, for just taking both gases at a middle time instead, halfway between those 2 times, or at the timing of the 2nd one, as long as it doesn't starve you. Just because then you need to look at it, build 2 gas. You know, box SCVs, build 2 gas. Look at it 25 seconds later, box 4 SCVs, put them on both gases. Whereas if you need to do that twice, it's incredibly APM intensive, and it makes it much harder to get value out of your Widow Mine drop effectively. Because it's kind of happening around the same moment, and you're focusing on getting your barracks upgrades, and your +1, and you're factoring your starport swapping over. So I think we want to just come up with a general rule to do both at the same time. So what do you think would be a good marker for you there?
You know, honestly, I don't know if it would make me starved or not, but at full saturation for the minerals on the 2nd, drop both gas. Seems to be pretty straightforward.
All right. So what we're going to do as well is I'm going to do something with your build. I'm going to mess with it.
Please.
That's the next step, right? I like to have it just kind of keep a space between our opening and what happens next. Because we could very easily change this to just drop a 4th and 5th barracks with no add-ons, keep rallying Marines, and pull SCVs and just try to kill them, like a minute later than what your initial standard push timing is. And it could be the exact same opening with a very different way of finishing, as opposed to what you're doing where you try to go 3rd base and Liberators and a 2nd starport and all this stuff. So the idea here is we can plug and play our opening into different follow-ups. And you can do this with every Terran build order. It's the best race for taking a set opening and having a 2-base all-in or a macro transition off the exact same thing, which is awesome. So we don't need to relearn a build order from scratch if we want to change from 2-base push to macro.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll have to try that. I definitely lean towards macro play, so I don't know if I've ever done a 2-base all.
Well, that's actually going to be your homework here. So for now, get that 3rd and 4th gas in. So just write that. I think that would just be the final point after 420 medevac. You'd probably have it somewhere around there at full saturation, natural, or however you want to write that. 3rd and 4th gas, 2 gases, however you write. I always write 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th, because I'm like tallying how many gases I have, but everyone has their own way of writing it.
Nice.
So you can use that as a trigger. And obviously part of your homework after today is going to be just playing this build. And if you do it correctly and you take those gases on time and you're really starved for gas and you can't start everything on time, just change it from full mineral saturation. Okay, on 13, just take both gases. And just make it nice and simple for yourself that way. So try to make sure you're always, we're still figuring out, is this the right build order? We're not 100% sure just yet. We need to test it.
Gotcha.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Okay, cool. You've got the third and fourth gas defined. You've got the second and third barracks. You've got the macro transition. Let's do the all-in transition. And this is going to be your homework for a week or two. Now, the reason why is because you have a very low win rate in this matchup, and we need to give you a very clear strategic focus to both give you more wins, but also to give you more reps. So we want you to win or lose earlier in the game. We do not want the game to drag on and then we die to Colossus Storm, 7 base Protoss 35 minutes from now, when we could have in that time played 5 TVPs and you know, basically immediately won with our push and looked back and said, oh, I could still do this better, or lost and said, I could still do this and this better, right? We want to kind of have a quick, short rep, and we want to be just looking at how I can improve my baseline. How can I improve my execution of my build order? So we're not trying to look too much at how our opponent's playing until we get our own build order down super friggin' tight. So this gives us like a real clear endpoint to the build. It's not going to drag on too long. Some games will drag on a little bit, but we're basically like 2 base or die trying.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely do that.
Cool. So 4th and 5th racks, no add-ons, just building Marines. You can add +1 armor if needed. Big SCV pool is an option as well, if you want to do that. So, the thing is, all the practice you're doing with the all-in, people, I don't want to just practice all-ins and be a noob.
Nice.
Doesn't matter. Everything up to the point where you add the 4th and 5th barracks, like I said, can easily be plug and played 2 weeks from now into a 3rd command center transition. And a 2nd engineering bay, and then getting up a 2nd starport and liberators with range and all that. So this is really cool. So we're still practicing your macro play, even whilst practicing an all-in. So don't feel like, oh, this is pointless because I want to be a macro player. There is 1,000 things we are going to learn, and we're going to be much more detail-oriented because the consequences of our mistakes are going to be really obvious when our push gets totally dicked because we're 10 Marines short. And when we crush our opponent really hard and decisively, the fact that we executed well is also going to be really apparent. So it's really cool. This is like a nice way of turning our ladder into training. We're going to be more focused, more decisive, and that's going to be super duper awesome. So let's go back to the push in this game. And let's remember already, you would have moved out way earlier with the Widowmine drop with a few changes we made. Maybe that would have done more damage, okay? Other than that, your push would have been faster because your 2nd and 3rd barracks would have been down much faster. Remember, we started our engineering bay this game. We actually forgot to make +1 with it anyway.
Yeah, I was hoping that wasn't going to be the case.
So what about tanks or mines? Like I said, we need a baseline. This is how we play. When we're not sure, we need to just choose one unit we kind of prefer for now. Like I said, tanks are a bit better for like, you know, sieging. For instance, you see where I'm signaling on the minimap? Can you see that?
Yep.
Excellent. You might be like sieging there and here or something, you know, basically doing these nice little leapfrog pushes where you siege your opponent, force them to fight into you, right? The mines, on the other hand, much better for dealing with the zealots jumping on top of you. Not as good at dealing with sentries, Colossus, stalkers, you know, immortals, force fields, those buying time tactics, which are tank punishers, right? They're trying to come forward and shave off some units. Your tanks are shelling them and destroying them, right? There's ups and downs. They're both good. They both can win you every single time if we do it well. Which one do we want to stick with? Tanks or mines as our starting point?
I guess I prefer mines. They don't feel as safe as tanks, but I feel like utilizing the factory to make tanks earlier feels like cumbersome for whatever.
Okay. I mean, you've definitely been doing it a bit of 50-50, the way you've been doing it, because it's been a little disorganized, but I'm happy to start with mines. I think they're both really good ways of just pushing in and trying to finish the game. It is a bit harder against Colossus, like I said, with mines, but it's pretty hard with tanks if they have a lot of charge lots, and the fights can be one-sided if they kind of jump on you before you siege up. It can be a bit...
Yeah, and I assume that's what the Raven is for, right? To use the Matrix on the Colossus?
Exactly. If you're doing this Raven version, we also want to use anti-armor missile usually rather than the other one. rather than interference matrix on sentries, because anti-armor missile is massive. So if it's a charge-lot army, it's all about that anti-armor missile. If they fight you with -3 armor, ooh, it's having a +3 upgrade on your Marines. So if they've got +1 already, that's +4. So you're fighting with +4 Marines. Even if they've got +1 armor, that's insane, the amount of damage you're doing. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I just realized they use interference matrix to remove the +2 armor instead of using anti-armor to give it -3.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you could do both, maybe that's great. A lot of the time, the Zealots charge out of Guardian Shield anyway. Sometimes we focus fire the sentries quickly. There's a lot of things we can do. So basically, what's important is your factory is going to need to build a tech lab after the 3 Widow Mines, right? So you've written in your build order, what have we written? We've written factory. I don't think, we've written mine ×3, tech lab, lift and reactor, mine. So yeah, you've got the right order written in for the factory now. That's good. We don't need to change that. So we're going to do mines as standard every game. And that's actually the better option for playing macro as well. Because the only time you really want to go siege tanks is if you're doing like a mass marine tank style, which is insanely powerful if the opponent attacks into your siege, and really hard to actually get across the map and force your opponent to attack into your siege with, because you're very vulnerable to charge lot flanks and storm and things like that whenever you're not sieged up. So for now, we're going to focus on that push. We're going to have this bio push hitting earlier, faster, more decisively. And what are we going to do in our games? We're going to benchmark that push, okay? So we're going to be like, cool, I get to their 3rd base. So if we look at this point, we can just do it here. All right, so I want you to benchmark the push. So I've written benchmark the push under all in transition. I put a little indent. So you can write down just all the things that you think are important to benchmark here so that you can compare it to your next reps on this build order, and then you can keep looking to improve at it. You can see progress that way, whether or not you're winning or losing your games.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I took a small stab at that with the move out time. But yeah, I think with the tightening of the build order, I'll probably have.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we want to. You said 50 workers, 21 Marines, 4 Marauders, 4 Mines, 3 Medevacs. So a 645 move out. Is that what you'd?
Yeah, 645 is when I try to be moving out to attack.
Okay, cool. So I like to also benchmark when you hit. The reason I like to do this as the main benchmark instead is because we often dilly-dally on the map and piss around for a bit if we don't record that. So it's important to kind of go, let's get straight across that map and hit as hard and fast as possible. Of course, if you see a Protoss player who doesn't have a 3rd base and has 400 Zealots, maybe we pull back and wait a while longer. But in a normal game, macroing a 3rd base, we want to get over there, hit hard and fast. So I love that sort of benchmark. You wrote 50 workers, 21 Marines, 4 Marauders, 4 Medevacs. So let's do a few benchmarks. We don't want no more than 44 workers, right? Maximum, because we're doing a 2 base all in with this. Okay. We want to have stim, shields, and +1. And then basically it's medevac count, mine count, marine marauder count. And obviously timing that we hit is the main one as well. Timing, we arrive at 3rd. So that, if you just record those after every game really quickly, just get in the habit of doing a quick rewind as soon as the game finishes and just write those down. Obviously bonus points, if especially in your early games, you go back and check your opening a little bit and make sure it's all tight. But just by benchmarking that, you're already going to be able to keep an eye on how well you're developing. And without even thinking about what your opponents are doing, we should be able to get this push harder, faster, and better.
That makes a lot of sense. So in this setting, I use the 645 push out time as kind of the trigger to start moving across the map.
Yeah.
And then I use the, what I have at that moment as a benchmark. For this, what triggers the push? Do I still try to push at 645 and then start recording what time I actually make it there? Or is something else the trigger for the...
Stick with that for now. See what makes sense for you. You might feel like 6 mines is a real power spike. Everyone's going to charge, 6 mines is when you want to be pushing out, just as you're hitting 6 mines. Maybe it'll be before that, just as we want to fight as soon as stim and shields and +1 is finished. I think it's up to you. So if you stick with 645 for now, see how it feels. I think that should be totally fine. And you can keep, using that as the marker to move out. And yeah, just benchmark when you're hitting their base and it should be good. So let's talk a little bit about attacking, because there's so much, right? There's so much we can focus on with how you attack, how you execute as a player. So the push. And this is something you can write many, many notes on. But in this game, for instance, we saw our medevacs fly into the blink stalkers earlier, which was one problem. So we can just write all sorts of notes. Keep medevacs with army, you know, obviously blink stalkers are a big problem. Visualize your push path beforehand. Some people like to always go straight to the natural to just kind of get into their, you know, the heart of their bases and really force the fight as quickly as possible. Other people like to always go for the third. It's important to visualize where you're going to push ahead of time though. Other than those two notes, notice we went in kind of blind and got jumped on here. So what do you think you could have done a little bit better to make sure you don't get ambushed or jumped on top of by charge zealots?
I keep telling myself I need to send out a Marine, like a scouting Marine that's ahead of the main party to figure out where their army is, and I'm pretty piss poor at.
Either work really hard on that or drop a scan. A lot of people, as they start moving across the map, start saving energy for scans, and that's kind of a nice habit we can use. Stim and or so it's one or the other. Or so which one?
3 scans available.
Yeah, or just scan before we arrive. You got to make sure if we walked in, we just got like 2 force fields on our army and a Colossus beam in the middle of our Marines right now. Like we just lose the game. And as it is, this ends up being a pretty bad siege up as well. All our Marines are up front. Our tanks aren't sieged. And we also, with a siege tank push, I mean, our Raven's lagging behind as well, which is bad. But our siege tank push should probably be, you know, sieged up over here to the right, down across that ledge or something, right? Like there should be, you know, some probably cleverer position rather than just marching straight in, unless we actually saw, oh, he's got no army. We got to get in there because he's probably got 8 gateways about to finish up, right? But if you see zealots, stalkers, sentries, we would have sieged up a little bit further back, spread our units out, and kind of edged our way forward, right? And that would have been super powerful. It also would be something where we might be rallying across the map. Normally something I hate, but if we're really just committing on 2 base, that's going to be big. It's also something where, because you're not going for a third CZ, it's just a 4th and 5th barracks, all you're doing is rallying units and building depots at this point. We're not really doing anything else. So 90% of our focus is going to shift into microing this army, okay? So ideally sieging our tanks before the fight starts, ideally stimming bio, well, I guess we'll be using mines. Ideally getting mines burrowed before the fight starts or as it starts, and then kind of getting the stim and the stutter step going with the bio can be really nice. So if we look at this one, I don't think we stutter stepped very much, partially because we probably wanted to guard the tanks. You can also see that we were just a little bit slow on the Raven. So absolutely this was an auto turret fight. Because it was too late to do anti-armor missile or anything, this was a fight where if we just dropped 3 auto turrets there, that would have been a game changer. We would have been able to clear that army, I believe. Especially if they tanked a bit of damage, which they usually do.
The minerals have
Okay.
So stim or
auto
scan?
turret
Yep.
just because I was late.
Yeah. Yeah, if the fight's really scrappy, auto turret's usually the best thing to do if it's a scrappy close fight. Group up before we go in. So we might want to have a staging point. Maybe 1.5 screens from the third base, or however you want to think about it. The idea is group your army up and scan ahead. We don't want to waste time there. We can just drop a scan, be like, oh, wait for that Raven, wait for the tanks and the medevacs to group. Okay, cool, now we can go. And we like know where we're going to siege ahead of time. We know our favorite siege locations. We know we can do that stuff, and that's going to be huge. What are some other little things? Hey, your Widow Mine Drop's still alive. If Mine Drop's still alive, hit main base just after we arrive at third, right? So that's going to be something where if we just queue that to enter the main, our opponent's probably going to pull everything down. That's going to be great. Wait, in this game, look at it. He had 3 stalkers left in the main the whole time. Okay, maybe the natural is actually the soft spot. If you always hit the third and you've already threatened the main, they're probably not going to have defense on the natural. So that's probably actually the correct base for you to hit with that Widow Mine Drop, right?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense.
Finish that add-on.
And that'll change based on the meta, based on how things are going. So I've written main/natural in your notes there. Other than that, we're going to hit faster, we're going to hit harder. So let's go back and visualize a little bit. What's going on? Let's imagine that second and third barracks is just done a little bit quicker. We've got +1 on the way. I mean, we could have moved out a little bit faster, right? Or if we pushed out at this time, we could have had 6 mines easily. And just more bio, right? That's that faster second and third barracks. So let's imagine 7 minutes 30. What does our opponent have? 11 stalkers, 2 sentries, 4 zealots, an adept, charge, +1 armor. So upgrades would cancel out if you had +1 attack. If you had 6 mines and like 20 marines, a few marauders, like this, your army's just so much better than his, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to happen in a lot of your games. If you just hit your timing better each game, like you're just going to win most of them. That being said, if you take a glance at what the Protoss player is doing here, do you think this is safe Protoss play? Was he being too greedy? Was he being somewhere in between? So take a look at the Protoss's base, what he has, look around. Just want to test your game sense a little bit here.
I mean, this strikes me as too greedy. He's got a fully saturated third Templar archives this early. I don't know a ton about Protoss builds, but he's already wasted a lot in tech that he's not using at this point.
And he's only got 7 gateways. He should have 8 gateways. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, taking gases on the third, even having the third mineral line fully saturated with a full 16, 17 workers would be a lot. But you take 2 gases and another 6 probes on those gases. This is greed galore. And this is what most Protoss players just do without thinking, without scouting, without really paying attention to anything. So having a tight timing attack is going to win us every game, first one of these players. And yeah, you might start playing some players who start playing a bit safer, lower, probe count or this sort of stuff, try to throw you off your build with some of their own cheese. But I think most of the time, that is going to be huge. It's going to be massive. So definitely we can learn to look at things and benchmark a little bit. You're like, oh, wait a second. This guy had 1-1 just kick in. He has 9 gateways, no gases, and only 7 or 8 probes on that third base. And he has like 10 more zealots than this player has. So that's something where we might go, oh, that's a perfect response to our build. And we need to take a really friggin' good fight, right? If you can imagine 10 more zealots here, even if these tanks were mines, you got to have a good spread of those mines. Your buyer's got to stutter step real well. You can't get flanked. You might want to wait for more units. Off the top of your head, someone's massing zealots. They've got some stalkers with blink, but other than that, it's just mass zealots. What's the weakness of that army?
Massing zealots with stalkers? I would say mines.
And more stuff. Mines, absolutely. Mine count and bigger armies.
More stuff always wins.
The thing is, basically, small skirmishes, medium battles, zealot stalkers, great. The moment you get like 45 marines in a ball and 8 widow mines, like zealot stalker needs to have the sickest flank on you to actually not just lose all the zealots to the mines. Like the zealots are melee units. They start just getting gunned down before they can really deal damage. Your army, because of its glass cannon nature, the bigger the fights get, the better it is. So you can imagine, mine counter, bigger army, you just wreck zealots. That's just amazing, right? But if we push it too far, they can add Storm, right? They could add Colossus. They could add Storm drops, and that turns around. And suddenly we need to start spreading our bio out a lot. We need to start making sure we don't clump into Colossus or Storm. So there's power spikes on both sides there. But if we headbutt the moment stim, shields, and +1 finishes with like 16 marines and 3 marauders and a raven and 2 mines, and they just jump on us with 15 zealots and kill our army, we're probably not really going to have another push timing before they get Storm or Colossus or just overwhelm us with pure zealots, because we haven't given ourselves that opportunity. So if we think about the way bio works, its power is pushing hard and fast to punish a Protoss who's a bit greedier. Moment stim shields, bam, just take him down. Yeah, all right, we can just overwhelm. We've just got more shit. But if they've played it a bit safer on the economy, on the tech, and they have a lot more zealots, a lot more stalkers, something like that, we need to kind of have a little bit more patience. Now, this is really advanced stuff. This is stuff you are not going to be applying in your first games. This is stuff that's for down the road a few weeks from now. For now, I want you to be really almost stupid, where you're like, I always commit to this push no matter what, and I just aim to do it better and better every game. Because that will usually be
stupid. Right. I got that covered.
I need you to put on your stupid hat, man. And just blindly commit to it and focus on refining rather than overthinking, right? But we're keeping this in the back of our head, so once you've practiced it a bunch, you can start doing that, okay? Mine kind of bigger army smashes zealots. So with time, we will learn when to pull back and wait for a bit more bio. Or an SCV pull before going for the commit. Okay? 70 probes, double forge, Colossus Storm. Kill them now. ASAP. Go. Charge. YOLO. That's basically what counters that. Just get the fuck in there and kill them because they don't have any units. And if you give them a minute, you'll be like, oh, I think I'm winning. And then you'll like walk in a storm and then like a Colossus is... They've got double robot. 2 Colossus just popped out. What the fuck is... You killed a base in 20 probes, but he has a 4th? What? What's going... You know, and you just kind of run out of steam and die. Because they've been incredibly greedy. There is always, you know, something that's right for you one game won't necessarily be right the next game. We're going to start out stupid, but with time, with experience, you're going to get way smarter, way better at this, okay?
All right.
All right. This is going to be awesome, man. Even this push here, imagine we scanned ahead. Those tanks were already sieged, or mines we can imagine they are. Anti-armor missile landed, and then we stim in, and we kite backwards. So our bio preferably wants to start the engagement and bait out the charges from way out in front of the tanks and then steadily pull back almost behind the siege tanks and even slightly behind them while just, you know, shoot, move, shoot, move, shoot, move. And you'll just kill this whole army and still have the tanks or the mines and the bio, some of the bio surviving. You'd have more bio rallied across, more medevacs. Remember, no 3rd CC. We'd just have a 4th and 5th barracks and we'd just no starport. We'd just be like rallying non-stop units across this map and go for the kill.
All right, I'll bash my head against some Protoss and see how it goes.
I think it's going to go really well, man. Obviously, there's a little bit of chance and luck based on how things go. BattleNet says I didn't coach you well enough. It's removed me from the Grandmaster League. Let's see how many times it's done that. Just once? Just once. Which one? I removed my Terran and my Random. Apparently, haven't been playing enough in the last 2 weeks. I've been on vacation, so understandable.
Brutal.
All right, man. Good stuff. Yeah. Write down any notes, save replays. Anytime a game infuriates you, something doesn't make sense in the notes or what I've told you, write it down. You know, use your own problem solving as you run into things. But if you record it, we can really tackle it in the next session. We can do a quick review of this. Maybe we'll spend the whole next session continuing to work on TVP. Maybe you'll already be starting to have success and we'll move on to another one. So give yourself at least a few days of practice. And then hit me up, and we can set up another session in the next couple of weeks, mate.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Hey, you too. Take it easy.
Good luck on the ladder, man. See ya. All right. Good little coaching session there on TVP and trying to make that work. So,